Hi, I'm Claire. I've made it to the Great Southern, one of Australia's most undiscovered wine destinations. Spanning 5 regions, this area is known for Pinot Noir, Riesling, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay and Shiraz. Later, I'm headed to Denmark to meet with Steve at Rockcliffe, but now I'm headed to Plantagenet to meet the team behind the winery there in Mount Barker. Welcome to the Cellar Door. So Tom, I've made it to the Plantagenet Cellar Doors. Beautiful place. Can you tell me a bit about your role here?
Well, I'm the General Manager of Plantagenet, have been for about 18 months. My role is to make sure that we sell enough wine to cover all our costs and have a nice little profit at the end of the day.
Excellent. And so can you talk us through the pioneers of this company in this region?
I guess so Plantagenet was established from a vineyard perspective back in 1968 by an English gentleman called Tony Smith, who came out from England and adopted an agricultural bent, I suppose. Yep. And it really still staggers me today as to some of the pioneering spirit that was shown by Tony and others to establish an industry that was not in existence back in the mid-60s. And as a 35-year-old man, having recently acted upon, I guess, a report that said there might be a viable industry in Western Australia, to actually come out and spend his time and effort and money and resources to develop a vineyard with no guarantee of any return is an amazing story. Yeah,
absolutely. And so how did it flow on from there, from Tony's story?
So Tony obviously spent a long time establishing Plantagenet, and over time he certainly established 5 vineyards through our estate. Wow. He converted this winery here, which was an old apple packing shed, into a winery and cellar door, and happily sort of made wine for many years.
Yeah, okay.
Until my family, so I'm part of the Lionel Sampson Sadliers group. So the Lionel Sampson family is a very old, historic Western Australian family, established or first came out into business in 1829.
Wow.
So second oldest in Australia. There's a small Tasmanian farming community that's the oldest.
Right.
They started in 1808, I believe.
Right.
So just missed out. But similar to Tony Smith, a pioneering family. Lionel Sampson came out and established an import-export trade business in Fremantle. And his main job was to bring in goods for the new colony, which was established.
Which was sort of growing.
Which was growing at the time, and not surprisingly, I suppose, import of liquor was high on his list. So there's a nice little link there. And back in the early 90s, in around 1992, the Lionel Sampson Group acquired a third of Plantagenet. Okay. And over time, we slowly acquired more until 2000, where we bought out Tony and his partners.
Right.
But Tony's still very much a loved and revered figure, and still very much an important and valued member of the Plantagenet family. Yeah,
amazing. And so can you talk me through how the name came about? Because it's quite a really unique word, Plantagenet.
There's a few things, Plantagenet. So I guess firstly, we're in the Shire of Plantagenet, so that's a neat linkage with the region. Probably the more interesting story is that Tony Smith can actually trace his lineage back to the reign of the Plantagenet royal family, which was in the 12th, 13th and 14th centuries. And the reign of the Plantagenets started in Anjou in France and extended all the way through to England, and they ruled England for a long period of time.
And so that's the origin of the name of the region.
Yes.
And then the name of the winery borrowed from that.
That's right, yes.
And so that's where the crest that you've got on your shirt originates from as well, the 3 lions. Yeah. So that's a beautiful story. For people that have never visited Great Southern, what's here for them?
Well, the Great Southern is an area that people may not be as familiar with as perhaps Margaret River. It's a long way from Perth, so Perth's the most isolated city in the world, and we're the most isolated region from the most isolated city in the world. It's a real journey of discovery down here. Yeah. We're blessed with natural beauty, we're blessed with an amazing climate and soils for viticulture. Yeah. we produce wines that are of real outstanding elegance and sophistication. So for me, people coming down to the Great Southern, it's a big commitment. You have to drive for at least 4.5 hours to get here, but once you're here, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. It's got these really sort of rolling hills, almost a little bit sort of reminiscent of England or even Tasmania. And that sort of feeds into the wine story, doesn't it? Because this is a great place for growing grapes.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually. There was a number of studies done before viticulture was here or in Margaret River. A couple of particularly well-known studies. One was Professor Harold Olmo, who from UC Davis came out. It was funded by the state government to do a research piece on whether viticulture could be a viable commercial industry in Western Australia.
Right.
He discovered that there was 2 regions that would be most suitable. One was Mount Bark and the other one was Franklin River, both in the Great Southern region. Funnily enough, Margaret River only became more relevant when Dr. John Gladstone said Margaret River is also very suitable provided that the vineyards are planted on well-drained soils and are managed appropriately. So from those studies, the region was established both here, starting at Forest Hill in 1965, and then in Margaret River, as we know, with Bass Felix in 1967. So we're right at the start of that process and journey, and our first vineyard was 1968.
And so the idea that Tony came from New South Wales as a young man to the most isolated part of what was probably his options as an agriculturalist and as wanting to be a farmer.
Yes.
That's a really incredible feat, isn't it? In the scheme of things, going back that far, and it really seems his spirit sort of lives through this company. Is that how you see it?
Oh, absolutely. Tony's an inspiring figure for his entrepreneurial nature, and if you ever get the chance to go and visit the first vineyard, which is called Brewery, you'll see that it's not only viticulture, it's marron farming, it's wind turbines, it's olive trees, citrus, it's all there.
Yeah.
He had a crack at a lot of different enterprises, and he was very entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I love that, and there just seems to be this utmost respect for grape growing and farming and the actual management of land here as well, which is really nice to see. Well, Tom, it's been wonderful to hear your take on Plantagenet. I'm off to meet Jordan now at the Widejup Vineyard, so thanks so much for your time, Tom. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Jordan, we're here in the Widejup Vineyard, which is part of the Plantagenet suite of vineyards. Tell me about this place in particular.
Widejup Vineyard is one of the oldest vineyards in the Great Southern, planted in '68.
Wow.
The oldest red grapes outside of the Swan Valley in WA.
Okay.
And Widejup is situated in the Great Southern, which I think one of the best, most diverse viticultural regions in Australia.
Right, and you are the viticulturalist.
Yes, I am. I'm a lucky man.
Plantagenet. Tell me how you spend your days looking after such beautiful vineyards.
Very, very busy, but got a good support crew to help us out. But really, it's about getting out and being a farmer, being amongst the vines, and making sure that we've got to do all the extra work in cool climate viticulture to make the premium wines that people expect. So, for people that probably aren't familiar with the Great Southern, key varietals: Shiraz, Cabernet, Chardonnay and Riesling, and to a lesser extent, but certainly still very important, our Pinot Noirs and our Sauvignon Blancs.
Great.
So quite a unique, diverse region to be able to do all those key varietals.
And for people that have never visited the Great Southern region, what should they expect in wine style and varietal character?
Certainly, typically cool climate, so wines of elegance, suppleness. Really, if you're looking, if you do know your wines, think perhaps Bordeaux, medium-bodied, very generous Shiraz and Cabernets in particular. So not big, overripe, but more delicate, plenty of acid, plenty of length, and certainly with the whites, I think we're noted for our Rieslings.
Yes.
Dry style Rieslings, that is. We've got some approachable Rieslings, but certainly we've also got our very linear, lifted aromatic, dry types. But yeah, very diverse. But there's also stuff there for the new punter that's out there.
Yep.
I think what we're seeing across in Australia. There's lots of the younger generation coming through, really enjoying wine. I think certainly we've got Rieslings that are approachable, Chardonnays that are approachable.
Yep.
And the best thing about the Great Southern as well, we're talking about how big it is.
Yeah.
You go down further to the coast, the Pinot Noirs are very approachable for the new punter.
Yeah.
So look, that's quite exciting for me. I like working with not just a linear one varietal. I get to play around lots of different batches, so it's pretty rewarding. We're very fortunate with the estate that Tony Smith site selection was quite well.
Yeah.
Majority of the vineyards are in the Mount Barker area, but again, part of Plantagenet, we source. We are in Great Southern, so we source from other Great Southern areas as well.
Right.
If you're talking about premium wine production, and you really are serious, we're looking at, so we've got Chardonnay blocks, over 50 kilometres effectively. And we're picking small parcels out of each Chardonnay, and we're doing the same for Cabernet, we're doing the same for Shiraz.
Yeah.
So logistically, there's a massive challenge for the winemakers, and they...
And you.
And me. But certainly, I've got to stand up for the winemakers here for once. But it's an added complex that they probably don't need.
Yeah.
But if you really want to have the opportunity to make that special wine,
that's
I think that's what you really have to do.
What is it that having fruit picked at different stages, what does that give a wine?
When you want to taste a really good wine, a great wine isn't going to be just straight and simple. Great wines to me are complex. They're interesting. They're going to promote conversation. They're a talking point. So you've got to have some complexity in those wines.
Yep.
Probably the exception is sometimes people talk about Rieslings just being that
Straight down the middle.
Straight down. That's right. But people don't forget about the lifted aromatic that you get with Riesling. So that's that sort of complex. So I think. Cool climate. It's not that big generous fruit that you get from the warmer regions.
Yeah.
So what we do is adding complexity.
Yep. So you sort of subtle layers and picking slightly riper, some extra flavours from that vineyard that you might not see.
Yeah. And you can juxtapose with something else. So.
Well, Jordan, all of this talk of
making you thirsty.
Premium wine is really making me thirsty. So I'm going to head down to the Cellar Door, but thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful, and this is a beautiful place, and you're lucky to work here.
Yeah, fantastic. Glad you enjoyed it.
Luke, I'm delighted to be here in the cellar at Plantagenet. You're the chief winemaker. Talk me through what we're going to taste.
Right, so what I'm going to show you through today is the House of Plantagenet wines. Effectively our Riesling, our Chardonnay, our Pinot, our Shiraz and our Cabernet.
Awesome.
So, all from slightly different vintages, but it'll let you see what the vineyard, or what part of the vineyard and I suppose the vintage itself plays in the wines and the final product.
Cool. So what's first?
Right, so we're going to have a look at the 2017 Riesling.
Great.
So 17 was definitely a slightly milder year down here.
Okay.
We had pretty mild nights, longer ripening period during the vintage period as such. So we got quite a lot of complexity in the wines. We also got a slightly lower Beaumay.
Great.
So they're not huge Rieslings. And I mean, I'm very passionate about Riesling because for me it's a direct conduit to the vineyard. We don't do a lot with it. It's it gets minimal lees contact post primary fermentation. We use a very neutral yeast strain.
Okay.
It's very clean juice. So what you see is effectively the soil and that I suppose that terroir, that vineyard.
Yeah, and the season.
Well, the biggest difference for me about especially Mount Barker and Great Southern Rieslings, I suppose in general, is it's the tannin or the phenolic profile. It's more of a talciness. It's more of a softer phenolic.
Okay.
So what I find, we're still getting very good acid. We get great fruit weight. So you don't tend to see the acid's there, but you don't want it to be pokey. So it's it's very naturally integrated into the backbone of the wine, and that's generally what I've seen around the region.
Okay.
There's going to be different profiles of the fruit spectrum, but with Riesling, it's generally going to be very citrus driven. We get some very nice floral notes, and that minerality, I think, that connection with the vineyard, and it's up and down depending on what vineyard and what region within the Great Southern.
Okay.
But for us in particular, it is very citrus driven and very minerally driven. But what I find with that phenolic structure is the wines are very, very approachable at a younger age. So it's there's no aggressiveness on the palate, but as ageability, there's still great phenolic structure there. It's not in your face.
Yeah.
So these wines, they're going to reward 15 plus years of aging. You know, we're looking at the 06 recently, you know, and that's about 13 years old, 14 years old now, and it's looking absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, especially with all of our wines across the range, we're dry with our Riesling, so we allow the yeast to ferment the wines dry. So there's no residual sugar. Look, there might be half a gram or a gram or something like that, but effectively we try and just to run it dry. So what you're seeing is just pure fruit weight and purity in the wine. That citrus drive, there's very slight secondary characteristics evolving now in the nose, a little bit on the palate, just slightly honeyed or caramel, but not a lot there at all. And it's just still got a lot of freshness and length in the palate. So phenolics not aggressive, they're actually quite, they just hold it all together.
So what's next?
Right, we're going to have a look at the 2017 House of Plantagenet Chardonnay, the York Chardonnay. So 17, similar to the Riesling, as discussed, it was a slightly cooler, longer vintage. So we got fantastic ripening with the Chardonnay. We got good ripe skins, riper seeds, and a lot of intensity of flavour and complexity of flavour. So the Chardonnays definitely out of the Mount Barker region. They're very linear, very mineral, very fine and elegant styles. They're not big, broad Chardonnays. So and I think you'll see that. And as a result, we're careful with the fermentations. We're careful with the level of solids that we use, the amount of new oak. So we use a variety of smaller formats, sort of 2 to 8 litre vessels,
like
and also larger format vessels, so the 500 puncheons.
Great.
It's just a different fermentation kinetic, a different integration of oak, and it allows us at that final stage of blending to just build up a lot more complexity to the wines. And I mean, just the natural acid, that very much citrus, sort of whiter stone fruit drive that we get out of our wines, they make fantastic ageable wines again. Great early drinking, good food wines, and awesome aging wines. So.
Brilliant. There's some real depth coming through there, isn't it? I'm so looking forward to trying it. It smells amazing.
And you can see how we've sort of balanced out that fineness, that elegance of the wine with nice texture and fullness on the mid palate. So still great length. It's still, there's a lot of beautiful balance of this wine. So. Can
you tell me the story of how you got started in winemaking then?
So I was brought up on a dairy farm in a region within Western Australia. I've always been a part of primary industry and I think things to do with the land. We actually ventured out of that around the mid-90s and started diversifying into horticulture and viticulture on our farm. So I was the brother that got nominated to go away to university and study, and my primary focus was actually viticulture and grape growing, but it was a double degree in both arts. And from there I actually was working about 9 months in the vineyard and about 3 months in a winery, just in different vintages around different places, and subjecting myself to a lot of different techniques and ways of making wine, and just slowly fell more in love with the madness of vintage and just getting my hands dirty and getting amongst it. So, and I'd been coming down to the Great Southern since probably the late 80s. I went to boarding school. A few of my mates from school were down around this area, so I used to come down and just fell in love with the feel, and I think the people and the general, I suppose, nature of this region. It's just fantastic.
There's real heart here, isn't there? There's a sense that you're very closely connected to the vineyards, to the land.
I very much feel that. I mean, my family history has always been agriculture, whether both in, I think, primary production and also in the government side of it, so in technical advice to farmers. And my grandfather was actually present at the first planting in the Great Southern in 1965, so he was the head of horticulture in the Ag Department of Western Australia. So for me, I've always had that connection with being down here and being a part of it. And I think, when you look at the history of Plantagenet, it's very closely connected to that first planting. It's only a couple of years afterwards. So I love being a part of that and almost a custodian of something pretty special to both this region and I think to Western Australia.
Absolutely. Oh, it's a great story. Tell me what's next,
Luke.
So
now we're going to have a look at the 2017 Pinot Noir from Mount Barker. So I think this is quite an exciting wine to have a look at. Pinot is definitely something that's getting a bit more momentum out of this region now, and I think everyone's sort of getting it together. I think both in terms of the site and also the clonal materials.
So in a region that's traditionally known for Cabernet, Sauvignon, maybe some Chardonnay and Riesling. Is Pinot a relatively new thing here, or what's the history of this grape in this region?
No, it's been around. It has been around for a while, but it has not been pushed to the forefront. So I think some of the more southern regions have done, been growing it for longer. We definitely had plantings for quite a while. It's just not been it's been something as the vines have matured, as that site's matured, we've only made it in the very best years.
Sure.
Whereas now I think the vineyard's got to a stage of maturity where we're actually producing very good crops every year.
Great.
And as a result, we're actually able to craft wines that are very ageable, very good wines, very elegant wines. So, and I think you'll see that. So, so 17 again, cooler vintage, relative. And this is a pretty traditional winemaking technique. You know, we did a little bit of cold soak with these wines, not a lot, just with some of it. There was no whole bunch with whole berry for the fermentation. And about after 3 to 4 by-May drop, we drain off about 10% into barrels, so into the new oak. We ferment that out naturally. We then press off the remainder. That goes into a group, and then they just go through their maturation, which is about that 9 to 10 months, so somewhere around Christmas of that year. We assembled the wine and then bottled, and this is the final product. So, and again, same as a Chardonnay, about 30% new oak, 100% barrel matured, and you'll just see, I think, some of the some of the nuances in both the nose and the palate.
And so, how do you describe these in a regional perspective, but also this wine?
Yep, so effectively, especially within the Great Southern, you're still getting a lot of that darker berry on the nose. We try to get, we do see some of that earthiness coming through. And some of the different vintages, we do get a little bit of that mushroomy truffle. It is hard to capture. And then basically we're trying to build up some of that complexity with the oak as well. So we're getting some of that struck match, some of that flint in the background, some of that French characteristic within the wine. And I think something that the Great Southern does have is, which you'll see when tasting the wine, there's a lot more fullness on the palate. So it's not a sort of sinewy or tighter style there. It's naturally got a lot more fullness, a lot more flesh. Still got great acid, great length, good phenolic structure, but it's quite a round wine. So
that's got real presence though.
Yeah, I think compared to some of the other regions in Australia, we naturally offer some of that generosity on the palate, and I think that's something that Pinot should have. We're getting that just from the vineyard as such.
It's got a really nice background notes of spice, and you can see that oak coming through a little bit as well. It offsets the fruit beautifully.
Oh, it's fantastic. There's those darker berries, a slight, almost cherry, a little bit of, there is almost that earthy, not mushroomy, but it's sort of there, like not oystery sort of characteristic, but then there is a lot of spice, a lot of layering, and that is the oak, it's the vineyard, it's the whole process.
It's the magic. Luke, what have you got here?
Right, so now we're going to go backwards one vintage into 2016.
Great.
And we're going to have a look at Shiraz, so a variety that's obviously very popular in the Great Southern. It's basically famous for.
Yes.
I think 16 was a fantastic vintage for it. It's a cooler vintage. And as a result, we've managed to, I think, create quite a lot of intensity out of what was a cooler vintage. So you should see it in this wine.
Great.
So with the Shiraz, especially in a cooler vintage, we try to do extensive cold soak pre-fermentation. So we're trying to get a lot more colour and flavour out of the berries before we actually go into the fermentation. Only because, especially with Shiraz, it's they're more delicate in terms of the berries. So you do get that skin breakdown, so it's doesn't lend itself as well to the post-mass. So we try to get a lot of that structure out. And also in the slightly cooler, greener vintages, we're more gentle with our treatment of the actual fermentation itself. So we're not aggressive with the seeds or the skins. We're more subtle with how we're trying to extract the flavour and the colour out of the wines.
Brilliant.
We're lucky here with our the processing equipment that we do have. All of our reds are going through just as whole berry. So we destem or we put it through, and effectively everything's going in there either cold or at the fermentation temperature, and just in a whole berry format. So that's what you're seeing.
Right. And what can we expect? Flavour-wise, aroma-wise?
Especially Mount Barker Shiraz, so it's going to have very much that spice, almost a pepperiness to the nose. Definitely not as much plum dry, but more a darker berry drive. And then there's also, we tend to get a lot of that sort of older world, earthiness and savouriness on the wines. And that's both a combination, I think, of just the fruit itself and the older vines, but also the oak treatment that we use as well. So.
And so in context, where does this sit in, the Australian sensibility approach towards Shiraz?
Definitely a cooler climate style of Shiraz, so finer, more elegant, but we do, on some of our better vintages, we get a bit more fruit weight, a bit more generosity on the mid palate. We still try to offer that, but what you end up with is a very elegant wine that has great ageability, because of the natural acid, the phenolic structure. So this isn't going to be a big Shiraz, it's just going to be a very well balanced, elegant Shiraz. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the same vintage as the Shiraz, the 2016 Cabernet. Great. So again, as discussed, another cool vintage. And I think it's, in those sort of vintages that you can create, great Cabernets. So a very noble variety
noble.
and a wine that can age for a long, long period of time.
So what is it that allows a red wine to age?
It's similar to a Riesling or any of those great wines that have ageability. It's primarily about having great acid. They do have, for my eyes, good natural acid, fantastic fruit weight. Whether it be prime, sort of singular or multi-layered and complex. So I think you have to have that, and then also just very, I suppose, excellent management of nice ripe tannins. So you need to build up that structure. I think once you give it all of those key components, and it has the ability to age. But I mean, there's a huge amount of different vineyards and varieties and so forth growing within this region. I think it's only really the great old balanced vineyards that give you that true ability to, I suppose, craft wines that have unbelievable ageability.
They're sort of balanced before they even get to the winery, aren't they? The fruit's just got such diverse and complex makeup.
Yeah, and I think also just that, you look at a region such as this, so straight away it's lower yielding naturally. Vineyards such as us is almost I suppose all on its own rootstock. It's all very open canopies, very old soil. It's very low vigour, and as a result, we're getting very good what they call skin to, I suppose, seed ratios. So we have a lot of skin matter, smaller berries, and as a result, there's a lot more intensity of flavour and structure. So it gives when managed correctly, you can build up wines that have unbelievable amount of ageability.
Brilliant.
So in this year, it was very much a cooler vintage, and as a result, what you'll see is very fine, elegant tannins, very elegant, sort of more suppressed fruit weight. So it's not a big, bold thing. And the secondary characteristics are, for me, more overt. Like they're very obvious. They're really present now. So
yeah, great. So Luke, for me, this wine has this sort of beautiful combo of drying tannins, but also beautiful fruit richness. How do you see this aging? What happens to it when it's 10 years old? How do the tastes change?
Yeah, well, I mean, Cabernet is such a fantastic variety for me, and how it does evolve, because it's got a lot of natural, beautiful tannin structure that it allows itself to age for a long period of time. I think the Great Southern, especially Mount Barker, has always been identified as a fantastic Cabernet growing region. And what you're probably identifying in the wine is it's very old world in its nature, in how it is, and that's just directly related to the vineyard and the fruit, and the climate in which we grow it. It's it's quite unique in that regard. I think we make some outstanding Cabernets. But in terms of the ageability, what you're going to see with this Cabernet as it ages is a lot of that primary fruit will just be suppressed. That'll sort of disappear. It'll still be there, but we're going to build a lot of those secondary characteristics. So a lot more savouriness, cassis, that earth. It's all going to be there. So it's going to be a very layered wine. And as it gets older and older, more of that cigar, tobacco leaf. There's even sort of a hint of soy and so forth there now, and you get some of that growing, or developing within the wine. So it just becomes extremely complex, and that's why they're so beautiful. And they change and evolve in the glass. So it's a wine even now you can pour it, and you can just sit on it and look at it over half an hour to an hour, and the wine will look different every time you go back to it. So,
and that's just the effect of the oxygen and the atmosphere integrating into the wine.
Absolutely, and just showing different aspects of the wine.
So have you got a favourite dish that you recommend with a wine like this, with the Cabernet?
To be honest, for me personally, I do like. It's going back to, I don't know whether it's an 80s thing, but I like oven bags and actually doing sort of more 4/4 cuts of beef in an oven bag. So it actually gets quite gelatinous, like it pulls apart. It gets, and it's something you can put in there at about 120 degrees. You can cook it for sort of, 6 to 8 hours and almost just falls apart. So something like that, just with, I just like very simple root veggies, nice thin dew, and it's, I think I don't want to overpower the wine. I just want to give it a canvas or a form in which you can actually enjoy both. And I think, you look at something like this, both of those are going to accentuate each other.
Because having something with a little bit of fat in it helps with to smooth out the texture a little bit, doesn't it, when these wines are quite young?
I think so. If you think about it like a grilled steak, it still would be fine if it was sort of more in a rare spectrum, because this wine does need some of that nice flesh. And I think when you're looking at something that's a bit more gelatinous, a bit richer, it actually helps balance them out. So it's sort of like a perfect pair as such.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking me through these wines. Such an insightful winemaker. These wines have such presence, such finesse, so thank you. Cheers.
My pleasure. Thank you for enjoying it.
I've made it to Albany, and my first stop is the Limeburners Whiskey Distillery. Let's go. Ben, how did this company get started? What's it all about?
Well, the company is the dram of Cameron Syme, who had a previous business career and came from a farming background, and I think it was his vision of wanting to do something that his ancestors had done back in Scotland. We'd had research from a Californian professor before that said this was one of the greatest agricultural growing regions of the world, and he picked up on that research and he chose Albany as the ideal spot for growing whiskey. 10 minutes down the road here there's a Limeburners Creek.
Right.
And that is one of the water supply creeks to Albany. A lot of the water here comes from bores, limestone fed aquifers.
It's a great little connection.
It is, and also limestone is a great ameliorating agent for the soil. So in Western Australia, where we have quite low pH soils, you add limestone to the soil and that allows the nutrients to become available for plant growth.
Can you tell me a little bit about the process and the type of stills that you use here?
Where we're making whiskey, we use very old-fashioned distillation. Here we have 2 pot stills. We've got a wash still for putting the beer into, and then we have a spirit still for doing the final distillation of the white spirit. So we start off with 1,500 litres in one still, and it goes down to 500 litres in the spirit still. And from that spirit distillation, we put it into barrel, and it spends, we talk about putting the whiskey to bed.
Okay.
It goes to sleep for at least 2 years. We typically put it into a ex-American oak barrel. And we quite often use bourbon barrels. And then after that, we can sell the whiskey as an American oak style, or we can put it into a finishing barrel.
Ben, I think it's time that we go and sample some of these beautiful whiskies. Let's head to the bar.
Let's do it. We call this the darkest winter. Okay. Because it's a whiskey you can enjoy in the depth of winter. Or you can enjoy it at all times of the year. But very smooth once again. It's you don't need to cut it back.
But still so fine and balanced. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much. Cheers.
Cheers, Claire. My pleasure.
Whilst filming the Cellar Door in the Great Southern, our crew chose to stay at Misty Valley Country Cottages in Denmark. A fantastic family farm stay or a cosy getaway for 2. Find out more, visit mistyvalley.com.au today.
Guys, I've made it into the brewery at Wilson's. Ben, talk to me about what Wilson stands for in terms of beer style. How do you approach it?
Our beers are very classic, very traditional styles. We focus on malt-driven beers instead of the, you get a lot of hop-driven beers out there flooding the market at the moment. So we like to just put a little bit of spin on it and sort of go back to the old school days. Yeah, they're just beers that you'd like to sit around and have a couple with your mates. Super sessionable.
Excellent. So Rob, you're front of house and national sales manager. Can you introduce me to how Wilson's got started?
So it started off with a lovely couple, Matt and Jessica. Matt was working the fly in, fly out job. Had the dream of starting his own brewery.
Awesome.
That dream got put into reality. Matt convinced Jessica to sell their dream home. So
the dream brewery for the dream home.
It took a little bit of convincing. But we first opened our doors in early 2017. We've been going strong ever since then.
So how big is this in the context of brewing in Australia?
It's classed as a medium-sized brewery. So it's quite big in terms of all the breweries around Australia, and we're doing just under 1 million litres a year.
Wow.
Which is a lot of beer.
That's incredible. Have you got beer sales all over Australia now? You've started here. How have you gone growing?
Yep, so we started off here in Albany, just local distribution. We're now spreading up across WA. Had fantastic support from the locals of Albany and beyond. Come here, drink our beers. Want to get it in their hometown.
Awesome. Well, we better go and taste some beer, yeah?
Absolutely.
Let's go do that.
I'll second that one.
Thanks, guys. Rob, I've settled in at this beautiful bar. What am I going to taste?
All right, we've got the Rough Seas Pale Ale.
Yep.
It's my personal favourite of the Wilson's range. Malt driven,
yep.
fruity, bitter.
Awesome.
And a good alcohol percentage of 5.8%.
Woo!
See what you
think.
think.
Thank you. So what is it that makes it fruity and what is it that makes it bitter?
We do a lovely dry hop with Cascade. Just gives that a lovely bitterness to it. We do add a few other hops in the Whirlpool, gives it a lovely fruity aroma. Yeah, lovely malt driven. It's a little bit different to a few pale ales you'll see on the market.
Yeah. Did you say that's your favourite?
My personal favourite,
okay.
yeah.
I can see why. All right, number 2.
This is showcasing locally grown Flinders hops.
Oh, cool.
So we work with a local hop grower. So they have a small 5-acre farm down at the Calgan River. So it's about 20 minutes down the road from our brewery.
Yeah.
The Dirty Ore Harvest Brown Ale.
And how did you come up with the name?
That was Matty Wilson's doing. We like to have a bit of fun here at Wilson's. Lovely beer, molly backbone, smooth, for its percentage, 6.2%.
It's actually, it carries its alcohol beautifully.
Very easily, yeah.
And it's even a bit finer than the pale ale, despite the fact that it's a darker style. Like it just feels a bit smoother on the palate.
I think that surprises people. Just as such a really easy drink of beer.
Thank you so much, Rob. This tasting has been very insightful. I could not think of a better place to settle in than Wilson's Brewing. I'm going to go and find a couch. Cheers. Steve, we're here at your winery, Rockcliffe, in the Great Southern. Tell me how this all came about.
Well, it all came about because I was working in Perth as a geologist and wasn't going particularly well. And I thought that maybe I needed to look into doing other things and diversify away a little bit from the oil industry. And so I came down here Easter and I was camping. And I got the last spot in the last campsite. And I talked to the lady who was running the campsite, who was also from England, so we were immediately good friends. Yes. And she said, "Oh, if you want to go for breakfast, there's a winery that's just started doing breakfast." So I came up here for breakfast, and there was a sign outside that was saying it was for sale.
Oh, right.
Yes, and then if you look from when you come in and you drive in, you see the vista of the vineyard with the trees and stuff. Yeah. It looked pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And when I've been working as a geologist and traveling the world, I invariably ended up doing geology where there were vineyards.
Yes.
So that was a very poignant thing. So I come here and I wasn't particularly happy in Perth. And so I thought, oh, well, this looks like a very nice property, you see. So I went in to have my breakfast. I was the first customer for breakfast, and I think I was the only one. I don't think anyone ever did it again. I had scrambled eggs and a hot chocolate, which was good, actually.
That's an important part of the beginning of things,
That was the beginning,
it
was a hot chocolate this time because it's cold here. And even though, Easter's normally pretty reasonable, I think.
So this is a cool climate region.
For sure.
Tell me about the Great Southern. From a geologist's perspective.
From a geologist's perspective, the Great Southern is underlined by more or less the same rock types across the whole. I mean, generally, it's the same rock type, and it's generally granite. There's a few outliers where there's some sediments, but generally it's granite. And that covers the whole area of the Great Southern, and actually much bigger than the Great Southern.
Okay.
The granites lend themselves beautifully to the landform. The beaches, the rocks around the beaches make an absolute spectacular landscape. I would have thought some of the best in WA and therefore some of the best in Australia. But the granites are actually, they're pretty old.
Okay.
I mean, Australia's pretty old.
Yep.
But the granites are 1.3 to 2.3 billion years old. Not million, but billion years old.
Okay.
That they impart, I think, a certain minerality to the wines.
Yeah.
Which generally would mean that Riesling would be pretty good here, which of course it is.
Yeah.
The granite is actually, it's just below the surface over most of the vineyards. The granite gets weathered, and so you've got a clay layer because you get weathers to clay.
Yep.
And then above that is generally gravels, which are formed from the eroding granite.
Yeah, okay.
So you haven't really got a very nice soil profile at all.
Yeah,
You've
what
got
we
a
might call
geological-
sort of hungry soil, but excellent for vines.
It would appear so.
Yeah, so as the vine's sort of maturing, its roots are heading down into those granite layers. And so when you're talking about minerality, how do you describe that to your customers?
I mean, I see it as like clear and crisp,
Yes,
you know, like
purity.
quartz.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
not diamonds, but
Yeah.
but actually,
Almost.
almost like diamonds. But definitely the minerally of the quartz, because quartz is a beautiful clear mineral.
And so is that where your name Rockcliffe comes from?
Rockcliffe comes from a multitude of different avenues, actually.
Okay.
Originally, the vineyard was called Matilda's Meadow, and when I bought it, I changed it to Matilda's Estate. As the business was growing, I was finding it very difficult to sell wine to distributors. Customers were fine, distributors were not, because they said, we don't like the name, Steve. Matilda is just is low quality. You're making high quality wines, it's a low quality name. And I said, but I'm English. And Matilda is an architect, it's the classic Australian name. So I refused to change it.
Okay.
Until I was I was in Brisbane with one of the distributors who definitely didn't like the name, and we were driving around and I saw this really run-down garage. It looked like it would come from a Hollywood horror movie set.
Right.
And it was just like it was covered in grease and oil, and it was very dilapidated. And across the top it said, Matilda's Garage. So I thought,
that's
I get it. I understand it now. But I changed the name. So it took that very simple point to change it.
Yeah.
Then it took 3 or 4 months of working out how to change it.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to do was generally have something which was kind of local and related to the Great Southern. And we just looked at loads of maps of the area, particularly the Denmark area, the beaches, looking for names, because there were several really nice names which were possible, but nothing that had really much of a story to it.
Sure.
And then we found a map that had a road on it called Rockcliffe Circle. The nearest beach to Denmark is called Ocean Beach, and that has a series of rock cliffs at the far end of it. And that was called where the road Rockcliffe Circle was, you see. And so, I mean, as soon as we saw that, it was absolutely instantaneous.
Yeah.
The best name possible was Rockcliffe, because it links to the local thing. You can actually take people to the beach and say, there are the rock cliffs over there. It's geological, of course, because it's got something to do with rock, so it's linked to me. But of course, it's linked to the vines as well, because these rocks, these granites underlie the vineyard. So everything kind of worked.
Wow.
And the fourth one, of course, is things that if you actually Google Rockcliffe, which we did, of course, because you didn't want to do something stupid, like it was named after something really bad somewhere, but it was always generally a good thing. Like there's an area of Toronto, I think, which is very upmarket, which is called Rockcliffe. And then you've got the restaurant chain called Rockpool. So it generally, anything to do with rocks, it has some sort of substance and quality to it.
And it's of a place in the end, isn't it? And that's what wine is all about.
Yeah.
Tell me about the vineyard here. What have you got planted? How do you approach the viticulture?
What's planted here is Chardonnay, Pinot, Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
What was planted here when I bought it was all of those, plus Shiraz, plus Cabernet Sauvignon, plus Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. Okay. But the problem with that is that the heavier reds don't grow well in Denmark.
Yeah.
I mean, they grow, but they don't ripen. So you're trying to get them ripe in April and May. The weather is it rains, and then it sets all back again. You can't get anywhere. The vineyard here, vineyards in this immediate region, Denmark, are very expensive to run because of the climate and the humidity. You have to net because of the birds and things.
Yeah.
So you have to have really good quality. You have to grow really good quality grapes, which you can sell at a really reasonable price because of the cost of running it.
Yeah.
So we took out the Shiraz, all those heavy reds, and put in more Pinot, more Chardonnay, and more Semillon actually.
Yeah.
We didn't put more Sauvignon Blanc in.
So we're sort of on par with some of the Victorian regions. So you're really championing that cool climate flag for WA, aren't you? As opposed to Margaret River and Swan Valley.
Yes, because Margaret River is subtly warmer.
Yes.
We're probably more akin, I would have thought, to Tasmania, but definitely Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yes, Melbourne for sure.
But,
but Tasmania, yes, and South Island of New Zealand, I would say.
Of
those
course,
are our,
fantastic.
this particular region. But I think this is a real key point. The Great Southern, which is this where we are, Denmark is part of it, is divided into 5 sub-regions.
Yes, tell me
which
about
Denmark
those.
is the most southerly one, well, with Albany, I suppose. And then as you go to the north, you've got Mount Barker and the Paronga Ups.
Yes.
And then further north again, and you've got Franklin River.
Yes.
So as you go further to the north, the climate gets warmer and warmer.
Yeah.
So that influence of the Southern Ocean, which we get here, dissipates somewhat. So it gets warmer. You also go higher. You don't realise you're going high, but Mount Barker, which is 50 kilometres away, is actually 300 metres higher than here.
Yeah.
So the climate changes, and the warmth means that over there, of course, you get really good Shiraz and Cabernet. You still get Riesling because it seems to grow in all 5 sub-regions.
Yes.
But you'd really get fabulous Shiraz and Cabernet. So that means that the Great Southern, not only, well, in the whole in Australia, it is perhaps the only wine region that can produce every grape variety to a very high standard.
That's incredible.
Margaret River will produce really, in my view, only Cabernet and some Chardonnay, which is really good. But they're a tenth the size aerially of the Great Southern.
Yes,
They're
it's a very
small.
expansive region, isn't it? Yeah.
So they really only have, they don't have the climate variation that the Great Southern has.
That's true. I mean, you're looking at, high quality, cool climate vineyards that are all managed, with care and diligence and detail. So, it's, well known for quality, really, and that's what they're after, isn't it? So, that's great.
So it's kind of, the Great Southern really is like the wine basket, as opposed to bread basket of Western Australia.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah,
fantastic.
It's fabulous, actually.
And
it's great because people come here to the Cellar Door.
Yeah.
And they say, "It's just been here. You've been to the Margaret River, and we like some of their wines. Potentially, we come here, we like all the wines.
Yeah.
Because everything can be made to a high standard because the grapes are all the varieties of really good quality.
Absolutely. So your Cellar Door is here, open 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
7 days a week, and you're here, so people can come and meet the man behind the brand.
If they want to, yes.
And you can taste everything when you come here.
Yes, open? Because I believe that if you want people to try it, they should be able to taste it. There's some wineries in some Margaret River and here, they don't taste all of them.
You come all the way.
We don't do the museum release stuff because we don't really sell those. We just have them on display.
Yeah, sure.
But all the wines we do. Sometimes the people come here and they're surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean you allow people to drink the sparkling? Oh yeah, sure, of course, why not?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's a long way away.
Everybody can do it. Yeah. We don't charge for tastings.
Yeah, that's
nice. I think that's a bit strange. Well, I kind of understand it. We don't have, we don't have busloads of people coming.
Yeah, and it really feeds into your expertise in geology that all of your wines are really named after these exceptional little areas in this region. Yeah, that makes it really unique, doesn't it, as well?
I think so because the area is unique.
Yeah,
because this conflict between the sea and the geology. It really is special. If you go to some of the bays around here, the absolutely beautiful, majestic granites, backing the beaches, and then you got this little sort of swathe of sand.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Beautiful place to live.
Yeah,
you're very lucky. Steve, I think we need to go and taste some wine.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
Can we walk up through to the Cellar Door?
Yeah. Okay, so let's try the Chardonnay. So the Chardonnay is perhaps on the vineyard, it's the biggest area of grapes that we have.
So we're here on the Chardonnay vineyard, aren't we, where the cellar door is?
Well,
so
right, it's right, almost surrounding us.
Oh, great.
The Chardonnay, yeah.
And so what's the story with your Chardonnay?
Well, the Chardonnay is a beautiful, nectarine-y, stone fruity. It's typical Chardonnay, but the thing is that we don't want to over-oak it.
Sure.
I think some wineries over-oak it, and what I want to do with the Chardonnay is always be able to taste the Chardonnay.
Sure.
And it's not so oaky. I mean, if you have a Californian Chardonnay, for example, it always tended to be really oaky. And when I used to live in the States, I used to love Californian Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And then I come here, and I can actually taste Chardonnay.
Yeah,
this is really nice.
Grapes,
the difference is substantial. And sometimes in Australia too, the Chardonnays are a bit oaked, I think. But with this, it doesn't. It's almost halfway to an unwooded Chardonnay.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's got that beautiful purity to it and the lightness of being colder climate, so we're not seeing lots of ripeness. It's got beautiful acidity. You know, it's really clean, but still fleshy. It's delicious. And it smells
it's really
outstanding.
We always do very well with this wine.
Absolutely.
And in fact, see, it was interesting because when I first took over the running of the vineyard, the best-selling wine was unwooded Chardonnay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then 2 years later, no one wanted it at all. And so then, what are we going to do with it? Oh, we'll make Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So slowly we started to move it from unwooded Chardonnay to Chardonnay.
Yeah.
But not overdoing it. So the rosé here is an interesting one. I used to, when I was working in the oil industry, I worked for some period of time in France. So I used to live in Paris, which is obviously very difficult to do and a great hardship, which of course meant that you had to spend quite a lot of time drinking. And
of course.
So that you were happier. It's just terrible, really. You know, you have to go to the cinema and watch great movies and then go to jazz clubs and things like that.
Yeah, it's a terrible place. Yeah.
And then the terrible thing was you had to work, so that was always a bit of a problem. But the thing was, I learned from being in Paris is that the rosé, particularly with some styles of food, was absolutely fabulous. But it has to be almost a grey colour and dry.
Yes.
And so when I eventually come to Australia, rosé tends to be very pink and sweet. There's an interesting reason why that seemed to be the case. Because I was telling the winemakers, perhaps we need to have a dry rosé. And their comment was, well, no one wants to drink dry rosé, Steve. They all want to have sweet rosé and it's got to be pink. And I said, no, it's got to be grey, because in French they call it vin gris, which is grey wine. And it's got to be dry and it's got to be grey.
Yeah.
No. Several years later, I have a French winemaker, and I say to him, Anthony, you're going to make the rosé.
Yeah.
He's from Provence, so he knows how to make good rosé. Right, he said. So then you have to find the grapes to go in the rosé, and that's not easy because they don't really grow here.
Yes.
So we managed to find some Grenache, which actually comes from Franklin River.
Oh, great.
Sub-region, so it's coming from the Great Southern.
Yeah.
We found good Grenache, and of course we've got Shiraz, which goes in. We didn't have any Mourvèdre, which I think is generally the third grape that goes into Provence rosé. And then we let Anthony make the wine, really.
Great.
And so this is the first time we've made this wine, and of this like that.
Yes.
With what I call the Provence style.
Yes.
Of rosé.
Yeah, great.
And well, when we of course we put it into the wine shows, and we put it into the West Australian wine show, and for some reason or other it got a trophy for the best rosé in West Australia. So at our first attempt,
wow,
we managed to get the trophy
Wow. And it's important to note, I think, in this instance, that a trophy is the very best.
It's the top wine in that group.
Yes, it's of all the gold medal winning, it's actually the best
There's
one,
only
isn't
one
it?
trophy.
Yeah, there's only one trophy.
So it's the top rosé.
Well done.
And that was the wine show of Western Australia, so it had about 100 rosés in the competition.
Yeah.
So it's good, but the problem that we now have, of course, is we have to better that. So the winemakers, now we have another French winemaker who's also a rosé specialist. So she is now challenged with the 2019 to make it a better rosé.
And so with dry rosé, we're really talking about taking the best flavours of the grapes, which in this case is Grenache, Shiraz or Syrah. I guess you're trying to highlight the very top notes of those, aren't you?
Yeah.
And not leave any sugar in the ferment. So it's got, it's really focused. And it's quite a grown-up wine, isn't it, really? Like it's got this beautiful colour and it looks very sort of...
Well, but it's very easy to drink it.
Yes,
it's just, I mean, it's got that definitely Provence character to it, because it's actually... You know, when you go to Provence, and I was lucky enough to go to Provence because I had to go to check, see all the other winemakers and see if I can. It's like with the New Zealand tour
wines,
thing to improve the Pinot. I go there to improve it. So you talk to the winemakers, and they come up with other things that they do on making rosé because they're specialists.
That's all they do. Yeah.
In rosé.
Fantastic. And so, food-wise, what's your? Where do you go with this? Is this sort of any time of the day? Doesn't matter?
Well, I think rosé is much more of an anomaly than anything. Because you go to Provence, and when I go to cafes in the morning for breakfast, you know, and being English, I of course have a cup of tea.
Yes.
So I'm sitting there having a cup of tea and a croissant, and then the French come in. I'll have a rosé. So they're having rosé for breakfast.
wine.
So it's not that they're having croissant with it; they're just having a rosé. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, they'll have a rosé, and it's just a lovely drink. And it's lovely. It's warmish. You know, it's just great wine to drink at any time of the day.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
But it's great with more. It's a white wine, really.
Yes, essentially.
It just happens to have a pink colour to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, they're made in the style of a white wine in terms of their
virtually the same as a white wine. Yeah.
Well, Steve, this has been absolutely fascinating, and I love these wines. They've got such finesse. Thank you, and cheers.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
I've had such an incredible time exploring these two wine regions of Western Australia. Margaret River and the Great Southern are so different, but they have so much in common with their beautiful wines and natural beauty. Don't forget, for more episodes of The Cellar Door, you can check us out online. I'll see you next time.